Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are absolutely thrilled to welcome you here in person. We are not on video. Yay! My name is Jana Gordon, and I'm the Executive Director of Alumni and Development here at Keene's. Now, before we get started, and we have a great afternoon planned for you, I would like to take just a moment to acknowledge that Keene's University College is situated on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenape, and the Chinandon peoples on lands connected with the London Township and Sombra Treaties of 1796 and the Dish with One Spoon Covenant. The Dish with One Spoon Covenant has three main purposes: to keep the land clean, take only what you need, and take care of each other. King's University College values the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and all of the original peoples of Turtle Island. With this, we respect the longstanding relationships that Indigenous nations have to this land, as they are the original caretakers. We acknowledge our role in creating a better Canada by accepting responsibility as a public institution to contribute toward revealing and correcting miseducation, as well as renewing respectful relationships with Indigenous communities through our teaching, research, and community service. Now, I would like to welcome our president, Dr. David Malloy, to the podium.
Thank you, Jana, and good afternoon, everyone. So yes, welcome to the quote-unquote last lecture, but heaven help you if this is your last lecture. I'm hoping 10 years, 5 years, 3 years, 40 years from now, you're still attending lectures, because this is a lifelong environment that we have here as scholars. You're all scholars, and it doesn't stop. So this is the last lecture, perhaps for 2022, but it certainly won't be your last lecture. So I was asked by the organizers to provide some reflections on a lecture that I was exposed to as an undergraduate student. So I'd like to spend just like a couple minutes, literally a couple minutes, to talk to you about a lecture that was actually was written in 1956. Be clear, I was not born in 1956, but this is a lecture that I read as an undergraduate student. And I think about this, maybe to say every day would be an exaggeration, but pretty darn close. At least I think about this weekly. So I want to just give you a quick summary of this particular lecture, and hope that maybe snippets of this you might carry with you. And if you're really keen about it, I can tell you where to find this lecture as well. So this was a lecture given 67 years ago by a German philosopher. His name is Martin Heidegger. And if you have been exposed to Heidegger's work, you know it's extremely difficult to read. Which is a shame, because he had many great ideas, but often it's pretty inaccessible. But this particular lecture, it's called the Memorial Address, is something that the non-technician in philosophy can read and understand. So if you really want to look this up, it's Martin Heidegger in the Memorial Address. And in the Memorial Address, he talks about two ways of thinking. And the first is called calculative thinking. And what he meant by calculative thinking is that we see each other, we see the world, we see resources all around us as tools, or something functional, something utilitarian. And interestingly, 67 years ago, Martin Heidegger was talking about environmentalism and how we tend to be destroying the world because we are using everything as a tool, whether it's trees or ocean or the land. We were abusing it for utilitarian purposes. So he felt that our focus on technology and kind of utilitarian functional speaking was something that we were kind of locked into. We've become almost too technical, too scientific. And as a consequence, we really lost any other way of thinking. He gave the example of Robert Oppenheimer, who you may know was the builder of the atomic bomb that was eventually dropped on Hiroshima, as an example. That he saw the whole project of building a bomb kind of like an interesting scientific project, a puzzle, but he didn't really reflect on what it meant until after it was tested in the New Mexico desert. And then at that time, he kind of saw the meaning behind what he had done and became an anti-nuclear activist. So that brings me to the second kind of thinking. So calculative thinking is very functional, very technical, and arguably short-term. The second kind of thinking that he talked about in this memorial address, this lecture, is called meditative thinking. And I think you can maybe consider this reflective thinking or thinking about meaning. And in this case, we don't necessarily look at the individual tree in the forest, but we look at the forest. We look about the impact of the forest on the world and so on. So it's a combination of what he suggested we should be doing is a combination of calculative or technical thinking. So science, technology, engineering, math kind of thinking, the STEM subjects, and then balance that with meditative thinking or reflective thinking, or frankly, humanities and social science kind of thinking. To do one or the other is incomplete. For us to be living holistically, for us to have meaningful individual lives, and for us to take care of the planet, we really have to be doing both. We've lost, he argues, the skill to do meditative thinking, but it's certainly possible for us to do this. The point here, you're graduating with wealth of knowledge, whether you're in economics or in philosophy or history or French, doesn't matter. You're graduating with a wealth of knowledge. You're graduating with a full toolbox of skills. You're graduating as very qualified, calculative, logic thinkers. But I know because you're graduates of King's, you're also graduating with a sense of purpose, with a sense of meaning. And I think all of you, regardless of the discipline that you're graduating from, you have acquired that sense of meditative thinking. What is meaningful? What is social justice? The whole notion of King's being a place to be and a place to become and a place to belong. We're really emphasizing that whole notion of meaningful community living, the way we treat each other here at King's, and the way, hopefully, that when you leave here, the decisions you make, not only as individuals, but the decisions you make in your professional capacity. So you will have that skill of calculative thinking, that technical thinking, which is so important. We can't survive without it. But you also consider the meaningfulness behind those decisions that you make. So I think we do this as a function of, I think, the culture we have at King's, but it's also the mentorship that you've received from your faculty. We have an outstanding group of academics, of scholars, of teachers and researchers here. Dr. Roney is just one example that you this year have selected to give this quasi-last lecture. So I am very hopeful that you will all leave here as strong, calculative, and meditative thinkers. You are the best and the brightest that we have here at King's this year. I know you're going to have wonderful careers. I hope you won't ever be strangers to this fantastic university. I want to congratulate you. I want to congratulate your faculty for mentoring you so well. And like all of you, I'm looking forward to Dr. Roney's lecture. And I hope 67 years from now, we'll be talking about your lecture. So make it good. And yeah, we're all looking forward to the wisdom that we'll gain from your lecture. And Chris, congratulations. This is what an honor this is for your student body to choose you. So congratulations to you, and congratulations students, and thank you for giving me the chance to chat with you about the memorial address. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Malloy, and also for reminding us that lifelong learning is so important. And maybe this won't be the last lecture, maybe the last lecture at King's. Now, I would like to invite our Dean of Students, Joe Henry, to come and say a few words.
Okay. Great to have everybody back in person. I got to take off my glasses. I don't know why I can't see anymore, but that's okay. I just have a few words to say. And first of all, congratulations to the graduating students on the completion, the almost completion of your journey. And I'm proud to have served you over the course of your time here at King's. We talk a lot about King's being a place to be, a place to become, a place to belong. And I think when it comes to the student experience, I think it's totally appropriate characterization of what we do. As you might remember, 4 long years ago, or more or less, I mentioned when you started that if you were the same person with us when you graduate, we would not have done our jobs. I can confidently say that you and we have all changed, not just because of the pandemic, but because of the transformative experiences you have had inside and outside the classroom. You have made this a place to be, become, and belong. It's about you, our students, and our great faculty and our staff. So let me explain with a few examples. In terms of being on campus, I have seen students be advocates and allies for change on campus when it comes to a range of issues in terms of supporting LGBTQ2S+ students, supporting and advancing issues related to anti-racism, changing the culture around gender and sexual violence on campus, and advancing the calls for truth and reconciliation. I have witnessed students be leaders in a variety of student clubs and leadership opportunities on campus, including working with our amazing KUCSC, the 25+ clubs and leadership groups on campus, including our SOFs, our peer guides, our camp mentors, our residence assistants, and so many more. I've seen students be so passionate about their courses of study and to get engaged as a result of the efforts of faculty and staff to assist you in finding your calling and your purpose. In terms of what you've become, I've watched some of you become national and provincial champions. Go Mustangs. I've observed with pride as you become involved in local, national, and international causes. That is part of the fabric of this special place we call King's. As we advance issues of social justice, human dignity, and equality. I have seen you become so skilled and competent, such that I know wherever you're going to go in your career and wherever that takes you in your education, the time that you spent here will take you anywhere. I'm so proud of you all. I'm so honored to have served with you as your Dean of Students. I wish you well in the next steps. And don't forget, you will always have a place here at King's, no matter where you go in life. All the best. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Joe. And now I'd like to introduce Matthew Plaska. He's the Vice President of Student Events, and he's going to introduce our speaker.
Hello, everybody. Thank you all for coming. I just want to thank all the students who took their time to cast their vote and their favorite professor for this year. There were a ton of great professors named, but we all know there can obviously only be one professor chosen. So after achieving his Bachelor of Arts, Master of Arts, and PhD right here at Western in psychology, Dr. Rennie has been teaching at King's since 1995. Through countless publications, articles, conferences, presentations, and serving on committees, Dr. Roney brings a wealth of knowledge to students and teachers alike. His courses include research methods in psychology, human sexuality, theory and psychology, correlation and multivariate research methods and analysis, and motivation in the South. I'd just like to share a few of the reactions from students when they found out that Dr. Roney had won last lecture. People said, great choice. I can't wait to attend and be inspired. This is wonderful news. Dr. Roney is the best professor I've had in my life, and he's the epitome of what an educator is or can be. And with that, it is my honor to introduce this year's keynote speaker for the last lecture, Dr. Christopher Roney.
We've got dispensation to take the mask off, which is nice. Otherwise, we got the worst ever episode of The Masked Singer happening up here. Well, first of all, I mean, I got to confess, I was already a little nervous before Dave said I had to give a talk that was going to be remembered 67 years from. Honestly, if any of you are still conscious at the end, I'll figure I've done okay. I'm not worried about 67 years from now. I saw on the web page said that I was going to be imparting words of wisdom, and I thought, I think there may have been a mistake that, so you might have heard that I was a wise guy. It's not. This is not the same thing, really. Anyway, I'll see what I can do. I want to quickly also thank IT, because yesterday, as I was putting this together, I found out that the screen was broken, which of course was going to be bad because you'll see there's a lot of visual stuff here, and that would not have been a good thing. So for me to do this without PowerPoint would be like a chimp getting around without roller skates. I could still do it, but it'd be a lot less entertaining to watch. So. It's kind of dark. I'll be all right. So a week ago, I found out I was going to do this and was totally flattered, of course. And I'm very honored to be here and doing this for you. Very quickly, all of those emotions started to fade a little bit into apprehension as I started to think about what on earth am I going to talk about? I've never really done talk quite like this before. And so what came to mind was actually, and this will be sailing a few people sitting out there who are taking my class on the self, but kept popping into my head was a study that we had talked about literally just the week before. And I thought it would be a nice framing device to talk about this. And you'll see that it's all about the journey. So sorry for the cliche talking to a graduating class and calling it the journey, sort of like a high school graduation referring to memory. I know it's cliche, but it is actually what I'm going to talk about and reflect on. So let me just super quickly tell you about the study that we discussed, and I'll tell you where it got to what I want to talk about. So it's a paper published in 2014 by Landau and their colleagues. And what the topic was, the week's topic was how our sense of self motivates us, it influences our motivation for good and for bad. And so what they were looking at is the role of imagined future selves, and how if you have a rich idea of yourself in the future, a positive one, that can motivate you forward. And there's some research that suggests that. But what they did that I thought was pretty interesting is they suggested that that's not enough. So for everybody in the study, they had to fill out, these were first year students, and they'd fill out what their fourth year self would be like and to write attributes that they think and hope their fourth year self will have. And the interesting part of the study, though, is that they're suggesting that the metaphor that you use is vitally important. So everybody in the study, they were randomly assigned to one of these two groups. So one group had this sort of growth metaphor of these ever enlarging boxes that get them to the big fourth year senior box. And the other half had what they call the journey metaphor condition. You can see for them that this was presented as a path, a journey that they're on, and hence the cliche title for my talk. What they predicted and found in about 7 studies is that this metaphor, when you're thinking forward, is more motivating, it's more engaging. One of the studies even found that students a week after this did better on an exam if they were in that condition. So it did seem to really energize them and engage them. Now, what I want to talk about, and what sort of popped into my head as I was trying to decide what to talk about, was what's kind of interesting now is obviously this gets flipped, right? So now yourselves, those of you graduating, you are that senior year self. That is you. That's so you can, if you want to flip around and think about your first year self, look back and gaze at who you were back then and what you might have thought back then. And what I think happens when you flip that, and this was our discussion in class as well, that the students said quite sagely, I thought, that there's a lot more to the journey metaphor than just being a destination, which is sort of what they're getting at. You've got your destination to get there. But there is a lot more to it than that. And in a way that's maybe useful in the forward-looking motivation sense. But I think when we turn around and look back, we can see what the journey has to offer us in and of itself, more than just being a way to get someplace. I should also mention, I think one of the reasons this was quite salient for me is that I can relate to a lot of the emotions that you might be experiencing that go with that when you get to that point. And we'll talk in a minute about the choices and so on, and a little bit of anxiety and apprehension going with that. It turns out that this is my second to last year at King. So next year I'm going to wrap it up. So as I'm looking at that, I'm also thinking that that's also kind of me. I can do that and I can turn and look back. I've been here 27, this is my 27th year. That means I'm old. And so for me to look back, I need a very strong telescope to see myself back there, but the same sort of thing. And it got me reflecting on the journey. And incidentally, if you do look back and you see your first year self actually looking back at you, you've got what in philosophy they call the self-reference problem. You're looking back and seeing yourself, but hopefully that shouldn't happen. So what happens when you flip it around? What do you see? What were we talking about a couple of weeks ago about the journey is more than just a means to a destination? Well, there's three things that I want to highlight. And all of them, I think, are things that are sort of missing from this first year looking forward metaphor. Certainly if they drew it, but I suspect probably in our minds as well as we think about it, there are certain things that aren't going to be salient to us that will hopefully be salient, in some cases, hopefully, one I'm starting with, in fact, but will certainly be salient, that there's a lot more to this than what you see there. The first thing I wanted to just mention that I think is very salient is that if you look at that picture, maybe that's sort of what your picture looked like. That's a pretty straight and simple road. That's an easy road. Like you jump on and you start walking and it's a straight line, and then you stop walking 4 years later and you're there. But I think, as you all know, that isn't necessarily the way it always works out. That in fact, that the road can be kind of windy and bumpy and rough. And that I think is true for any journey, and certainly getting through your 4 years, that could be true. Managing your time with work and school, managing relationships in school, just managing your time at school. There's lots of challenges that it poses. And I would really be remiss for this particular graduating class, I think, if I didn't mention the shared bump that you all had almost exactly 2 years ago. Almost exactly 2 years ago, you all got to have a very special curve thrown your way when everything that you sort of imagined from your first, not everything, but much of how you imagined everything playing out over the next 4 years suddenly got kind of stopped in its tracks, changed, altered. The social parts were totally altered. The academic parts were totally altered. And so there's something that I'm guessing you didn't see coming, right? You looked forward 4 years ago. You can certainly see now. In psychology, I could draw on some theories and research that say, when we face challenges and move forward, we grow from it. We're actually better for it. And yeah, there is some evidence for that, but I can't really stand here and say that I'm glad this happened to you, that just think how much better you are for it. Mostly, I just wish that it didn't happen. It was unfortunate that it happened. I will say, though, that from my perspective, and I I'm not the only one, seeing you guys work your way through this, I was really just constantly really impressed with just the resilience and the willingness, and trying to teach classes that are discussion classes, and how you didn't give up and say, well, it's just not going to be as good, but there's just as much engagement as there could be in that situation. And so I can say personally that how much I appreciated that. Helping me get through that was, having you folks come through it with me. So there's one of the things. We didn't see that coming. I'm pretty sure if you did, you're probably some kind of psychic. So when we look forward, we don't recognize maybe the bumps and things that your class in particular had a rather nasty one thrown at you. Second, something else then that our first year self, or my case, freshly scrubbed academic 27 years ago, looking forward, that you sort of you might sort of see a little bit, but it's not super salient, but I'm guessing it's quite salient for you now. If you look after that senior year, what's there? What's after that? Well, in this one, it's kind of like some vague sense. It looks like that road sort of keeps on continuing, and you just kind of keep doing the same thing. But I think, as you all know, most of you are not going to keep on doing the same thing, but then you're going to go off in different branches. And even if you're still going to be in academics, it's still not really just continuing down that same road. And so this is the part that I think really that at the end of that road is not just a vague sense of continuing forward, but you've got these branching off points. Now you have decisions to make. You got to figure, now what am I going to do? There's all these possible roads, and you got to pick one. I have to mention, I didn't notice this when I pulled this off of Google Images. I don't know if you can read that or not, but the Ireland signpost one, the bottom one says site of ambush. It's not my place to tell you guys what to do in terms of what road to take. But if one of them is labeled site of ambush, I would strongly encourage you to not take that one. That's my plan going forward. I'm not going to take the site of ambush. So this part's challenging, right? This part's hard. And I guess this would be where, if I'm going to impart words of wisdom, where it would be where I would do it. But frankly, I can't really. That's not really a decision that anybody else can make for you. What little wisdom I will impart is not really from me, but it's from another theory that we talked about in that self course that I think is relevant and worth keeping in the back of your mind as you work about these things. The theory is called self-determination theory. And the basic idea, or one of the important ideas, is that a pretty fundamental, they refer to it even as like a human need, might be debatable, but it is something that they argue is important for people, is autonomy. And what they mean by autonomy, they don't mean just do whatever you want. What they mean is, when you are doing something, if you ask the question, why am I doing this? And so with our branching off, so why are you going to choose the road that you take? Autonomy means that road is reflecting you. These are your values and your interests and your goals, as opposed to what other people want you to do, as opposed to what you think will get you rich, as opposed to what you think will get you status. There's a nice literature building off of this, and it's pretty clear in showing that materialism is a value. So really having as a major thing you're trying to get out of life, material goods and status and so on, is significantly predictive of lower psychological well-being. The more materialist people are less happy in their lives, basically, in the long run. And one of the reasons for that is that they have been shown that they're lower in autonomy. They feel like they're less autonomous in their daily life. They're not doing things that really reflect what they want and who they are, but they're doing things, in that case, obviously, to get material goods and status and so on. I think it's worth thinking about. I should also mention here, I got a big advantage on you guys because like retirement, they may as well just call autonomy. I don't have any problem here. Like, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to do whatever the hell I feel like, frankly. It's my big thing is, do I wear pants today? Yes, no, probably not. If I'm being autonomous, yeah, sweats would be good. But you guys don't have that luxury. So you have to make this decision. And autonomy doesn't mean that you can't take advice from other people. As I say, it doesn't just mean it's just you doing whatever you want. And it doesn't mean that you can't take into account, will I be able to make a decent living doing this? All that stuff matters. But what it does mean, I think, is that you don't want that to be dominant. You don't want that to be the main reason you're doing it. It's kind of it's a thing, it's part of it. But ultimately, you want to try to think about what are your values and what are your interests and what would make you happy. And then factor the other things after that. Make me happy and I can make a decent living, then you probably have a decent choice. Another aspect of this is that, of course, because you've got this all ahead of you, right? It's like, how do you know which road to get on? How do you know which one is going to be the one that's going to meet all this? Well, the bottom line is you really don't know. Some people are lucky. I was lucky. Somehow my path, I just sort of knew I wanted to be an academic, liked psychology. So I actually did just kind of, it was a pretty straight line, but I was really lucky in that. That's not the way it works for most people. And so you've got to make that decision and hop on one of those roads. And hopefully you give some thought to, how well it'll fit who you are. But you might get on that road and you might find out that you were wrong, that maybe that's not going to get you to where where you're going to feel autonomous and feel like this is really fulfilling you. And you know what? That's okay. Because unlike our initial metaphor with that road, you see that single road going on forever. In reality, these roads have off-ramps. I mean, the roads, they all have off-ramps all the way through, all the way along, off-ramps to other roads. And I know that for you right now, you might feel a lot of pressure, like, oh man, I got to make this decision. It's got to be the right decision. What if I make the wrong? But like for me, 27 years and looking back, if you go down a road for a few years and then you get the off-ramp, I know it feels like that would be a really bad thing to have happen, but it really isn't. I mean, you still got that part of the journey. You still take it with you. It doesn't leave you. It gives you some insight as you go onto your new road. It's still part of who you are. So that's okay. So, do the best you can, hop on the road and commit to it and try to enjoy the ride. And also, if you feel like maybe this isn't quite the road for me, then get the heck off. Look for another one. There's lots there and you have lots of time to find it. And, at the end of the day, it'll just be worth it for you to do that. And so this is all going to be on the exam. So, and nobody's taking notes. And what? Okay, well, this isn't going to be very long, but I just have one final thing. And this was also, again, sort of thinking about our discussion in class and flipping our journey around. So coming back to our initial picture there of our road from the perspective of the freshman self, something else that I find really striking when you think about it, and I think, again, it becomes especially noticeable when you turn and look back, and I think this might be a lot when students in the class were talking about how there's a lot more to the journey than just the destination, the thing that gets you from the first year you to the fourth year you. I suspect that some of that is probably social. When you look at this, that looks like, there's a whole bunch of country and Western songs, at least one by Neil Young about life's long and lonesome highway. That's what that looks like. And look at that. That's just you and yourselves, on that road. And that's it. You're there all by yourselves. But of course, that's not what this journey is like. In reality, you got a lot of people on that road with you. There are people in the car with you. There are family that were with you. There are friends that are with you. There are academics, we're all sharing that journey together. And I suspect that, and I don't think it's a coincidence that my students kind of recognize there being more to this metaphor than just a destination or the route to a destination. I suspect that that might be the most important part. When you look back and you see, what is this journey really? What is it that makes it something in and of itself that is fulfilling and meaningful for us? I think that's probably the single biggest thing. That's the thing that, at the end of the day, makes the journey and not just a long, lonesome highway to get you from point A to point B. And as I say, pretty salient for me as well, because this ending for me, when I look back, I can certainly say that that's the most salient part of my reflections back on my journey as well. And I hope it is for your 4-year version. It certainly is for my 27-year version. So I guess I'll just close off just a couple of quick things. First is just for, this is in particular for my students who I've taught, and you can be a proxy for students, 27 years worth of students. But I just want to express my gratitude for sharing that journey and letting me share your journey. It's really just such a wonderful thing to get to do. And what a great job this is. Any of you even remotely inclined to this, it's just such a wonderful thing to get to do. And it is all about that and the shared journey. And then for all of you, and I guess kind of for me too, I guess I'll just close by wishing you bon voyage. Okay. Thank you all so much for the honor of voting me to do this for me. Thanks.
So thank you so much, Dr. Roney, for sharing those inspiring words. And I do think you achieved some words of wisdom for us. So on behalf of the Alumni Association, we thank you for joining us today.
Thanks very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laura Peters, and I'm the Alumni Engagement Officer here at King's. I'm so happy to see you all come out for our first in-person last lecture celebration. The Alumni Office has planned a small reception to follow, and we'd love the opportunity to toast all the impending graduates out there. But just because you're graduating does not mean that your time at King's is coming to an end. You are students for a short time, but you're alumni for a lifetime, and there are lots of ways for you to stay involved. We have a mentoring program that is not just good for current students, it's also great for recent graduates. We will match you with an alumnus in the field that you're interested in. We have a brand new web series that will be launching soon, aimed at young graduates that will tackle topics such as money management and LinkedIn tips and how to create a work-life balance and how to eat healthy on a budget. So make sure to check that out. We also organize social and networking events in London and the other areas where we have alumni. And we'd love for you all to come back to homecoming in person this September. And maybe you're interested in volunteering, and we do have opportunities for that as well. So being part of the King's Alumni Association also means discounts on insurance rates, privileges using campus facilities, and other deals and preferred rates. So the best way for you to stay up to date with all that is going on is for you to keep your contact information up to date and to follow us on social media at KUC Alumni. I would also recommend that when you are updating your LinkedIn that you make sure to include King's under education. You can list a couple, so if you'd like to put Western on there, you can, but if you put King's on, it will make you stand out to other King's grads, and that's a great tool for networking. So we also, if you haven't had a chance to do the grad survey, we've got signs all around, so you can just scan the QR code, and we do want to keep up with what you're all doing. So it's now time to move to the reception. We are going to gather everyone in the lounge and do a formal toast. So if you got one of those paper tickets on your way in, you can hand that to the bartender. You will get a commemorative class of 2022 champagne glass. And please don't drink it right away. we would like you all to move towards, we have a microphone set up. We are going to do a toast. We are going to get some great pictures, and we will unofficially welcome you to the Alumni Association. So yes, absolutely. Congratulations. So please make your way out there now, and you can choose to either have sparkling wine, or we also have a mocktail, non-alcoholic ginger ale option for those who would prefer.